top story this hour. Hurricane Sandy headed toward landfall somewhere between Virginia, north to New Jersey. And to talk about what Canadians may prepare for, maybe should be preparing for, Frank from the weather station at the University of Waterloo at our downtown Toronto newsroom. Frank, welcome. What makes this storm, first of all, so unusual to you?
Well, normally when you have tracks of hurricanes this late in the season, they usually go up the eastern seaboard and just off into the Atlantic, or they sort of hit from the side and go up the eastern seaboard. This one is going up the eastern seaboard, but now it's going to take a left hook, blocked by a high pressure zone. And because of that, there's a lot of uncertainty as to not only its path, but what it's going to, what damage it's going to cause.
So if we had a weather map, we'd be able to show the high pressure system roughly over the northeastern Atlantic seaboard states, like Massachusetts and Maine, for instance, and that's holding the path of Sandy from going any farther north, and in turn it has to hook inland. And as you're probably going to explain now, we have this Canadian blast of cold air coming out of the northwest that's going to collide with it. So what can Canadians expect living in around the Great Lakes and maybe as far east as the Maritimes?
Well, certainly the Great Lakes are the area that's going to feel the effects first, and as well as the front that's going through currently of the over the Great Lakes, that is also being stalled by this high pressure zone. And then you've got this other storm coming from the northeast, and then you have Sandy coming in. So certainly when we meet all these things together, it just is the potential for a lot of precipitation. And of course you'll still have the, not quite hurricane force wind, but still some very high winds potentially from the remnants of Hurricane Sandy coming across. And you have those two combination, and there's a potential for not only just the damage caused by the flooding and the winds, but of course there's still a lot of leaves on the trees in a lot of areas. Those are going to get wet. They'll cause a lot of down power lines, and you have the potential for power outages that may last a long time, because a lot of crews are going to be out there repairing power outages all across the eastern seaboard of the United States.
And a lot of folks are wondering, should I be putting my snow tires on?
Well, there is some potential for snow, especially in the further areas of northern Ontario, but that is still, we're about 5 days away, so it's a little bit too early to say exactly where we might see some of that potential snow. We'll have to wait a couple days to see where the hurricane actually tracks. So it's definitely something to be thinking about and preparing for, but it's certainly too early to say exactly where we think that's going to happen.
You know, Frank, we've heard all sorts of predictions in the past. About storm of the century is the most common term used. Of course, at least in southern Ontario, that turns into some sort of a weather whimper, of course. Is this any different? Are we overhyping this storm, do you think, in any way, in the media?
Well, there's always a question of overhyping and not hyping enough, not being prepared enough. So I think that is, in terms of public safety, the best option is to maybe do a little bit of overhyping, maybe really make sure that people are prepared, maybe people have heard about it. The worst case scenario is that it doesn't hit quite as hard, but you certainly wouldn't want it the other way, where people are very complacent and you just say, well, it's just a typical storm, and then you may have injuries and maybe even deaths caused by it. So hopefully a little bit of hype, getting it out into the media, at least people will start to think about what kind of steps they will be able to take if they get into trouble.
We'll finish off, Frank, with some specifics. Where are you expecting the greatest amount of effect of this storm, when, and how much?
Certainly there are forecast models that are putting, say, more than 50 millimeters of precipitation in certain areas of southern Ontario, and that's where we'll see it first. Sort of Monday night, but more of a Tuesday is when we'll really see the brunt of the effect. But then that travels up and goes towards Montreal and the Maritimes. Again, the potential of over 50 millimeters of precipitation may be higher in certain pockets. So certainly anywhere from, let's say, Windsor all the way to Newfoundland should really be looking at the forecast for the next couple of days and seeing what plans that you've made for those days, and maybe think about maybe some alternatives.
Good advice, Frank from the weather station at the University of Waterloo. Frank, thanks very much for this.
No problem.
Well, Hurricane Sandy is quickly becoming a force.